Please welcome Chip Bergh, President and Chief Executive Officer, Levi Strauss & Company.
Well, good morning, everyone. Create and renew, a very, very appropriate topic given the massive disruption that the industry is going through. I'm going to talk to you a little bit this morning about what we've done to renew an American icon, the Levi's brand, and Levi Strauss & Company. We've been around for 164 years. The company was founded by an immigrant, which I've made a very big point of talking about a lot lately, who traveled to the West during the gold rush and founded what I call America's original startup and Silicon Valley's original startup. Levi's is created, the Levi's jeans was created with a deep consumer insight and a very unique innovation. It was built for the laborers who really built America, who were building the train tracks going across the country and who were mining for gold. A deep consumer insight that their pants were wearing out. And then along came the patented, riveted blue jean. We've been going through our own transformation. In fact, the company had a near-death experience back in the early 2000s. We were within days of going bankrupt. And today, the brand is back, it's strong, we're growing, we're outperforming most of the industry. So what I wanted to share with you today is just some of the stories on how we've done that. So this is a snapshot of us today. We're a little bit more than $4.5 billion in sales. We're truly global. We're in about 110 countries around the world. 4 main brands, and you can see on the chart that Levi's is the mother lode of all. It is our biggest business, our most important business, and where we make most of our money. We are multi-channel. We sell in big wholesale customers like Nordstrom, as well as all of the main wholesale customers here in Europe and Asia. But we're also a retailer. We've got about 2,900 retail stores around the world. About 750 of those we own. The rest are done through franchise partners. We've got e-commerce as well. Direct-to-consumer is a very important part of our business. So all in all, we're in about 50,000 stores around the world. But to fully appreciate the full story of Levi's, I need to take you back in time. Back when most of us were kids, actually, when this company was on an absolute tear. So this doesn't go all the way back 164 years. We kind of started this chart in the early 60s. We were a little bit more than $0 in sales, but not much more than that. And you can see through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and early 90s, this company was absolutely on fire. We were America, back when America was a good thing around the world. And we really were an American icon. And so a lot of the explosive growth in the 70s and 80s, whereas the company was expanding, first expanding across the country here in the United States, and then expanding globally. And literally, we would walk into a country, plant the Levi's flag, and the brand was just so aspirational that people would flock to our stores. If you're as old as I am, you'll remember our college friends. When we graduated from college, a lot of our college buddies packing a suitcase of Levi's and Marlboro cigarettes and going and bartering their way through the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. Unfortunately, 1996 was our peak year, $7.1 billion in sales. We were bigger than Nike in 1996. That was not that long ago. They were $6.5 billion in sales. What happened is pretty ugly. Massive shareholder destruction, from $7 billion in sales to $4 billion in sales in 5 years. And then, as you can see on this chart, the company kind of bumped along around $4 billion in sales for about the next decade. And it was really a whole confluence of factors that contributed to this. The company lost sight of the consumer. We took on a massive amount of debt to buy out some of the shareholders. The marketplace was changing dramatically. We were incredibly internally focused. All of the focus became paying off the interest on our debt. And the company stopped innovating. And any of you who are fans of Jim Collins, any fans of Jim Collins? He calls it his worst seller. It was a book called How the Mighty Fall, and he talks about the 5 stages of death. And I've just kind of overlaid what the 5 stages of death look like, and it's kind of remarkably similar to the graph of our history. So I got the call in late 2010 and was presented with the opportunity to join Levi's to try to make this company great again. I spent 28 years at Procter & Gamble. I'm a packaged goods guy. Mickey Drexler likes to make fun of that, but I'm still here 6 years later, so that's okay. But I joined this company because I saw it as a noble cause. This is one of the greatest brands in the world, and one of the greatest companies, one of the original companies in the world, around for now 164 years. So when I got the call, I started doing my due diligence. We do have publicly traded debt, so there's a lot of stuff available online. I started looking at that, and the circle didn't square for me. Here was this amazing brand and a company that just could not get its act together. And I also started asking friends and family, hey, what do you think about Levi's? I mean, I grew up on Levi's, and one of the things that I discovered is everybody has a Levi's story. Okay, so my Levi's story, when I got out of college, I did not pack a suitcase and travel through the Soviet Union. I instead joined the Army because I had an ROTC scholarship, packed my bags, and went to Germany to defend against the Soviets in case they were coming across the border. But on one of the very first vacations I took after I moved to Europe, and I was a second lieutenant, not making a lot of money, I did a Eurail pass through the Nordics. And I packed my Levi's and on my backpack, and away I went on a train, staying in youth hostels. And if you remember, back when we were kids, when you stayed in a youth hostel, the way you washed your clothes was you got in the shower with them on, you washed them down, you hung them up to dry. So that's what I did. I went into the shower, I put my wallet on the windowsill, washed my jeans, washed my t-shirt, hung them up to dry, went to bed. Next morning I woke up and I thought, my God, I left my wallet in the bathroom. I go running into the bathroom, the wallet is there, the Levi's are gone. Levi's is money. It was money back then. It was as good as cash. But as I talked to my friends and asked them about Levi's, they said, they all had their Levi's story, and they said, God, yeah, I grew up on that brand. I wore it to school every day. I was talking to Michael. Michael was telling me his Levi's story earlier today. And yet, when I asked, when was the last time you bought a pair, it was a long time ago. We had lost our relevance. A lot has changed since then. We've made good progress. This just plots our revenue growth over the last 4 years. We've grown successfully the top and the bottom line now 4 years in a row. It hasn't been done in more than 20 years. We're 1 quarter away from closing this fiscal year. Through 3 quarters, we're up 6% fiscal year to date. We're growing, and we're growing profitably, and hopefully it'll be 5 years in a row. This, I promise, is my last financial slide, and then we move on to fun stuff. But the team has worked really, really hard. And you can see we've really strengthened our financial position. We've paid off almost $1 billion in debt. Our cash, actually at the end of the 3rd quarter, we have almost $500 million of cash in the bank. Our net debt is down below $600 million now. When I joined the company, we were spending more money on interest expense than we were on advertising. And I am happy to say that is not the case anymore. We are now spending a lot more money on advertising than we are on interest. We're generating cash, our margins are up, our credit ratings are up, things are good. So when I joined the company, and I did join the company, the first thing I did was I spent a lot of time talking to people, and talking and really listening to people. First, I started with our employees. I asked the top 60 people in the company, I asked them the same couple of questions. What are the 3 things you hope I do? What are the 3 things that must stay the same? What is the one thing you're most afraid I might do? And after about a dozen of those interviews, there was a very, very clear pattern of the things that needed to change. It was really clear there was no strategy at the company. Everybody was working on their own thing. So this is our blueprint. This is our company on a page. We're pretty public about our strategies. It's not scientific. The other thing I did was, being 28 years at Procter & Gamble, I sliced and diced this company 1,000 different ways. We just started racking and stacking. Where do we make money? Where do we lose money? What's growing? What's declining? What generates cash? What doesn't generate cash? We looked at it by product, by segment, by country, by customer. And it was the classic 80-20 rule. 80% of our profits were made on 20% of our items. 80% of our profits were made in 20% of the markets. Roughly like that, and it became really, really clear what we needed to do. So our strategic choices were, and they needed to be really simple. I mean, you can ask anybody at Levi Strauss & Company, and they can play back our strategy. Drive our profitable core business. All right, that's where we make most of the money and where we generate most of the cash. It's our icons, our essentials, the 501. It's our top 5 countries. It's our top 10 customers. We have to win in that combination of businesses. That's great, it's necessary, but it's probably not going to be sufficient to grow. So the second big choice was expand for more. Women's. We were underdeveloped in women's. Tops. Conventional apparel wisdom is 4 tops for every bottom. We're the exact opposite. We sell a lot more bottoms than we do tops. Now our tops business, last quarter, our tops business was up 47%. Our women's business, which I'll talk about a little more, has been growing now for 9 quarters in a row. The third big strategic choice was to become a leading omni-channel retailer. No offense to our wholesale customers, but what I saw when I walked wholesale floors versus what I saw when I walked our own doors was 2 different brands almost. And when we're in control of our own destiny, it makes a big difference, and we really believed we needed to be in control of our own destiny, with an emphasis on direct-to-consumer. When I joined the company, we had 3 people working on e-commerce, dedicated. That was it. We outsourced everything. And our e-commerce business, it was a horrible experience. It was going nowhere. We brought it all in-house. We've been investing in it in a major way, and it's making a difference. And then the last big thing was we needed to take costs out. We needed to pay down our debt, strengthen our balance sheet, make our balance sheet an asset, and so we worked really, really hard to improve our operations so that we could invest back in the business. And what I like to say is, with Levi's, we've got to have 1 foot firmly planted in our history, in our originality, in our authenticity, and then another foot moving very, deliberately forward with innovation and cultivating new things. But as a brand guy, when I joined the company, my other big observation was we had gone completely off the rails in terms of how we were managing this brand. This is the advertising that we were running when I joined the company. This is a print ad, real print ad. You don't need to spend 28 years at P&G to know that when you run a piece of advertising, it might be a good idea to be able to see your product. It's not the brand that I grew up with. It was dark, literally and figuratively. It was edgy. It was depressing. And so Levi's is all about empowering self-expression. It's a positive brand. It's a democratic brand. It's for pipe fitters and teachers all the way up to Steve Jobs and Silicon Valley magnates. And consumers love us for our inclusiveness and our approachability, with a little bit of rebellion in it. So there was no evidence that this advertising was working, and I knew we needed to move on. So I said when I joined the company, I did a lot of listening, and one of the things I love to do, and I learned this at Procter, was consumer in-homes, which any research person will tell you is extremely qualitative, but after doing hundreds of them, they become quantitative in time. So here's a picture of me with a consumer in India. This is in Bangalore, probably half a year ago or so, after doing an in-home. But the big idea for the Levi's advertising actually came from another in-home, actually in India as well. When I was doing an in-home visit probably 6 months after I joined the company with a woman in India, and I will spare you the entire story, but at the end of the interview, we were actually, with the research company and a couple of people from the market and myself and her, she had actually laid out all of her genes. She was an upper middle class woman in India, living at home with her parents, good job, had gone to school in the UK, had gone to university in the UK, and she laid out all of her genes. And she had a lot of the usual suspects, a lot of the premium brands. So she had about 8 or 10 pairs, and we went through one by one. What's this one for? What's this one for? This was the one that I wear on date night. This is when I'm going out with the girls at night. We got down to number 2, which was a pair of Levi's, and I said, what's this one for? And she said, these are my go-to jeans. These are the jeans I'm gonna wear when I go to meet my friends for a cup of coffee in the mall, or we're going to hang out or watch a movie or something. And we get to the last pair of jeans, also a pair of Levi's, and I said, what are these for? And pause, silence. I get goosebumps every time I tell the story, I swear to God. She gets a little teary-eyed, and she said, well, the truth is, these jeans don't even fit me anymore, but these are the jeans that I wore in university, and I can't bear to part with them. She said, you wear other jeans, but you live in Levi's. And I was like, that's it. That's the big idea. So we knew that the campaign had to reflect what the brand was all about, and I set a really high bar. I was like, I've worked on brands like Folgers. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Choosy moms choose Jif. I mean, I've worked on great brands with great selling lines, and I was like, I want something that will outlive me. And Live in Levi's is that. So it was our CMO, Jen Say, JC, who is in the room here somewhere, and myself. It was the 3 of us, heads down, working with a new agency to come up with this advertising idea. And if we could run, this is the very first ad we ran about 4 years ago. If you could run this, please. Run the next video. Do the rumble this way. Do the rumble this way. So we did that. This was one of the print ads at the same time. But it really started to open up the way we thought about the brand. We actually asked consumers to tell us their Live in Levi's stories. And then we started thinking about how do we put this brand back at the center of culture? And what's culture in this country? It's sports, it's entertainment, it's concerts. And we did what nobody expected from a brand in the apparel industry, but we did a stadium. Yeah, like who's gonna do a stadium? Levi's did a stadium. Levi's Stadium, so we launched this, I think we announced it in 2013. In the first 2 years, we had Super Bowl 50 there, college bowl games, WrestleMania, which is like one of the biggest sporting events in the world, believe it or not, it is true. Beyonce, Coldplay, Taylor Swift, just to name a few. What do you wear when you go to a football game? Levi's and a jersey. What do you wear when you go to a concert? Levi's and a t-shirt. It put us right back at the center of culture. The other big thing I did when I joined the company was I invested in an innovation center, which we built literally about 5 blocks away from our headquarters in San Francisco. We had an innovation center. It was in Çorlu, Turkey. Not exactly a great place when most of your designers and a lot of your merchants are in San Francisco. So we did as best as we could to co-locate this. But I wanted an innovation center in San Francisco to attract all the thinking and high tech, the startups in Silicon Valley. We're working on green chemistry. We're working on sustainability here. It is a few blocks away from our office, but it was also intended to send a really strong signal. We were founded on innovation, and innovation is going to be what drives us for the next 164 years. So one of the things that we faced a couple of years ago was, you'll remember the headlines, the death of denim, athleisure's taking over the world. And our women's business started to see it a couple of years ago. So this is actually the guy in the center here of the picture is Bart Seitz, who runs our innovation center, as we were working on developing our new women's line. And what we decided to do is go back to the consumer and really learn from the consumer. Like, why would you want to wear a pair of yoga tights to a nice restaurant? And the answer was really, really simple. They like the comfort. They like that soft, stretchy material. So my challenge to the team was, why can't we do that? And we did. And this is an image. We relaunched our women's business in 2015, the middle of 2015. As I said, it's now 40% bigger than it was when we relaunched it. We've grown 9 quarters in a row, most of those quarters double-digit growth. We've launched online a virtual stylist. One of the things we learned was for a woman, and you know who I'm talking about, buying a pair of jeans is the 3rd most stressful apparel item they're going to buy. It's true. Bras number 1, bathing suits number 2, just in case you're curious. And what we decided to do, we've used artificial intelligence. We wanted to replicate the experience a consumer would have in our store working with one of our stylists online. E-commerce is an important and growing part of our business. And so we wanted to replicate that. And what we've discovered is our conversion rates go way up with this artificial intelligence-driven stylist device. The Innovation Lab also launched, we just launched a new trucker jacket. We're celebrating 50 years of the trucker, but at the same time, we just launched, in collaboration with Google, a new trucker jacket that controls your iPhone with the swipe of a sleeve. And JC's got it on if you want to see a demo of it later today. But it's the first foray into connected apparel. Trucker jacket number 1, as it came off the assembly line, is on its way to the Smithsonian Institute. The last thing I want to talk about is it's not just about what we do, but it's about how we do it. And this cartoon kind of captures it. But Levi's has been a purpose-led company for a long, long time. We talk about it as profits through principles. And the world is facing more challenges today than perhaps ever before. And I believe that we have a role to play. Business has a role to play. We can't just sit back. As CEOs, we are uniquely positioned to take a stand. And I talk about it as the CEO position at Levi Strauss is an amazing platform, and we've got a voice, and we need to use that voice. I believe there's a moral imperative for CEOs to take a stand and fight for what's right in the world. This is a program that we launched a couple of years ago, and I invite you to join us on this. It is called our Worker Wellbeing Program, where we look beyond the factory walls to address the needs of our supply chain workers. We've already touched 100,000 workers. Our goal is to get to 80% of the workers by 2020, and we're well on our way. But as you know, there are about 25 million people or so that work in this industry. We can't do it all by ourselves. We've open sourced this concept. It really works. It's a 4-to-1 return on investment. The factory owners pay for it. We've got a couple of other companies that have joined us. You can see on the lower right of this slide, this program got us on the Change the World list at Fortune magazine this year. We were number 11 on the list, ahead of companies like Unilever, Microsoft, IBM, American Express. The thing is, we were the only apparel company on this list. And I think we need more. Our employees expect it of us. Our customers are demanding it of us. The country is going through enormous change. The world is going through enormous change. And if CEOs don't stand up and fight for what's right, and if companies don't take stands on important issues, we're going to lose our consumer base. We're not going to be able to attract the kind of talent that we want to attract. And the world's not going to be as good of a place as it would be as if we stepped up. So about 6 months ago, and I will end on this, we with all the immigration stuff and the division that was happening in the world, we said Levi's needed to lend its voice to this. So we launched our latest ad, and it really speaks to, we are all humans. We are on one earth. We share it together. And instead of being divided, what if we all lived like we danced? Let's take a look at this advertising. So I don't know if the advertising's working yet. We had a pretty good quarter last quarter, and I think it is. But what I can tell you is that's the #1 Shazam song in the United States, the UK, and India for 3 out of the last 3 weeks. So, and we've made her a global star. That's Jane, by the way, and the name of the song is Makiba. Anyway, thank you very much. It's been great to tell this story. I guess we have time maybe for a couple of questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
There's a hand in the back.
How do you compare your international business with the US business? What is the challenges and the growth areas that you see?
So we run our business with 3 regions, the Americas, and Roy, who runs the Americas, Roy Bagattini, is here with me today, Europe, and then Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. And each of our businesses is very, very different, actually. Here in the US, our business skews very heavily to wholesale. The US is still a little bit more than half of our total business, and 70% of our business in the US is wholesale. In Europe, our business is more 50-50, retail, wholesale, and in Asia, we skew very retail. So it's a very different business and business model in each of the 3 different regions. The brand is also a little bit different in each of the 3 regions. Here, because of our wholesale roots and the dominance of wholesale, out the door, Levi's is kind of just south of about $40. In Europe and in Asia, where we sell better quality product, better and best quality product in most of Europe and Asia, our average retails are closer to $90. So it is slightly different, and that gets back to just it being such an aspirational brand and us having more control of retail in those other 2 markets. Our Europe business, through the first 3 quarters of this year, is up 15%. I mean, we are absolutely on fire right now in Europe. But all 3 regions are growing through 3 quarters. We've got, really a good balance. We're challenged here in the US because of wholesale, but our US retail business is growing. We don't announce comp stores, and we won't for as long as I can help it. But our retail business has been growing double-digit for the last 4 quarters, and it's not all coming from new stores. I can tell you that for sure. Okay. Other questions? Yes.
Can you tell us why you decided to launch the brand Redone, and how is it doing?
Okay, so the question was, we've got a partnership with Redone. You may have heard of this company. What they were doing, they were buying vintage Levi's, then kind of retailering them for today's consumer, so a slightly different fit than the vintage that they were buying. They relabeled it, so they ripped off our label and put their label on, and then they were selling it online for about $300 a pair. And there was a waiting list, and it was mostly A-list celebrities. It was a really good thing for the brand. And we're very, very protective of our trademark. So the initial reaction internally was, we got to shut these guys down. And then JC had the foresight and really the brilliance to say, wait a minute, let's make them our friend. Let's partner with them. And so that's what we've done. We actually have a licensing arrangement with them, and we actually help them source vintage now. And vintage, by the way, this speaks to the power of the brand. I mean, how many brands can you think of where consumers will pay more for the product when it's 50 years old than they will when it's brand new? I mean, really. And that is the case with Levi's. There are not that many brands that are like this. And so now we're moving down the path of how do we use authentic vintage Levi's, and we just bought the largest private collection of vintage apparel, vintage Levi's, about 60,000 units. We're going to authenticate all of it and make it available for sale in our bigger and better mainline doors, because it is another proof point of the power of this brand, that consumers are willing to pay a premium for a pair of 50-year-old Levi's. And it really does speak to the power of the brand. But it's a great relationship that we have with them. We're continuing it, and they've done a lot of great things for the business. If you were in New York during Fashion Week a couple of weeks ago, they launched the Cindy Crawford Redone collection, and we knew about it. We were in a little bit, but the mileage that we got from that was huge. So it speaks to the power of the brand.
That's all the time we have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.